Jack Porter wasn't looking for a fight when he moved to Cedar Creek Estates. After 2 tours overseas and years of battling PTSD, all he wanted was a quiet place to heal. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Freshly paved streets, trimmed lawns, friendly faces, and strict silence after 9 p.m. The kind of place where everyone waved whether they meant it or not. Jack had one real companion, Daisy, a well-trained Labrador with gentle eyes and a tail that wagged like a metronome. She'd been with him since the day he got out of the army, prescribed by his therapist as an emotional support animal. Daisy wasn't just a pet. She was therapy, protection, and comfort wrapped in golden fur. He moved in on a sunny Monday morning, hauling boxes while Daisy explored the backyard, her nose sniffing at every fence post. Jack kept to himself mostly, but by Wednesday morning, he noticed a piece of paper stuck in his doorframe. He tore it off, unfolded it, and read the words slowly. Notice of HOA violation. Emotional support. Animals are not permitted within the Cedar Creek Estates community. Remove the dog within 5 business days to avoid fines. HOA President Linda Carver. Jack stared at the paper, stunned. He'd lived in plenty of communities before, and he knew the law. ESAs were protected by federal regulations under the Fair Housing Act. An HOA couldn't legally remove or ban an ESA if it was prescribed. This wasn't just unfair. It was illegal. That night, Jack sat at his kitchen table, Daisy curled at his feet, as he wrote a polite but firm letter. He attached documentation from his therapist, Daisy's certification, and printouts of the law itself. The next day, he dropped the letter off in the HOA's mailbox by the neighborhood clubhouse. He expected some pushback, maybe a smug reply or another warning. What he didn't expect was a drone hovering over his backyard that very evening. It buzzed like a mosquito, floating silently, its tiny red light blinking in the shadows. Jack stood on his deck and watched it. It hovered for a moment, then zipped away into the trees. The next morning, a white SUV drove past his house 3 separate times. The driver didn't wave, didn't even glance away, just stared at the porch like he was measuring something. Jack's military instincts kicked in. Someone was watching him. He started noticing more. A woman across the street who always seemed to be walking her dog whenever he took Daisy out, but who never actually let the leash off the sidewalk. A man who parked near Jack's driveway every night but didn't seem to live nearby. A small handwritten sign appeared on a lamppost near his house. Pet-free neighborhood, keep our community clean. Daisy, of course, didn't notice or care. She trotted around the block on her morning walks, tail wagging, happy to sniff every tree and greet every squirrel. Jack, on the other hand, started locking his gates and checking his security app before bed. On the 4th night, Daisy started barking at 2 a.m. Jack jolted awake. He grabbed the flashlight and bat from under the bed and ran to the back door. The motion lights flickered on, just in time for him to catch a glimpse of someone running away through the alley behind the fence. In the middle of his yard, wrapped in crinkled foil, was a chunk of raw meat. Daisy was still barking, but Jack was already at the meat, kneeling down to sniff it. Something sharp hit his nostrils, a bitter chemical tang. Poison. He scooped it into a plastic bag, double-bagged it, and stuck it in the freezer. He wasn't going to the police yet, not without proof, but something was going on, and he had to be smart. The next morning, he went full surveillance mode. 4 cameras ordered, installed by nightfall. One for the driveway, one for the porch, one for the backyard, and one angled toward the alley. He connected them to a motion detection system with alerts sent straight to his phone. Then he started digging into the HOA. He pulled up their website, scanned the names: Linda Carver, President; Ray Morris, Vice President; Janelle Kemp, Treasurer; and Craig Doyle, Secretary. Every board member had an address listed. Jack ran a background check, just basic public data searches. He wasn't looking to cause trouble. Not yet. Ray Morris stood out immediately. He owned 3 houses in the same community, all purchased within the last 2 years, but he didn't live in any of them. Odd. Linda Carver, the woman behind the violation letter, had no pets listed under her license filings. Yet Jack stumbled across an old online listing on a defunct pet adoption website. Hand-raised purebred litters available, limited time availability, pickup only. The contact name: L. Carver. It wasn't enough to prove anything, not yet, but it was a lead. Then came the Craigslist post. It was buried deep under farm and garden pets, and it was vague. Purebred puppies, no papers, cash only, excellent condition, text only. The background of the photo looked familiar. High-gloss hardwood floors, gray granite counters. Jack had seen that layout before. It matched the Cedar Creek model homes. A pattern was forming. A pattern that smelled like profit, secrecy, and maybe even animal cruelty. And suddenly, it made sense. The HOA wasn't targeting Daisy because she was a dog. They were targeting her because she wasn't their dog, not part of their system. They didn't want outsiders bringing attention to the fact that they were running a side business. A black market dog breeding ring. Jack sat back in his chair, hands behind his head, the pieces snapping into place. They were breeding dogs illegally, selling them quietly. And now that he, someone with a certified ESA, had moved in, he posed a legal threat to the system they'd carefully built. They wanted Daisy gone. They wanted him gone. But what they didn't realize was that Jack Porter had fought harder enemies in dirtier places. He'd seen IEDs and warlords, and he wasn't about to be pushed out by a group of HOA tyrants with fake smiles and skeletons in their garages. If they wanted a fight, they'd get one. And Jack? He wasn't just going to defend Daisy. He was going to burn the whole damn operation to the ground. The next few days passed like a slow, tense crawl. Jack kept to himself, made no mention of the meat incident, and didn't respond to the second violation letter slipped into his mailbox. This one was more aggressive. It threatened fines, legal action, and even a lien on his property. Jack scanned it, saved a digital copy, and filed it under evidence. But instead of responding, he prepared. At night, he reviewed hours of camera footage, mostly uneventful. A cat here, a raccoon there. Until the third night, at exactly 3:12 a.m. Motion alert. Backyard. Jack sat upright in bed, phone in hand, as the grainy night vision footage showed a figure slipping through the alley, hooded and fast. The same alley where the poisoned meat had been tossed. The person paused near the edge of the fence, crouched, then sprinted away again. He isolated the footage, enhanced the frames, and noted something critical. The person had a limp. Right leg, dragging just slightly. He saved the video and backed it up to the cloud. That morning, he went for a walk with Daisy like he always did. But this time, his eyes scanned legs. He wasn't looking for friendly smiles, just limps. And sure enough, halfway around the block, he spotted Craig Doyle, the HOA secretary, pushing a trash bin toward the curb. He wore shorts and a tennis shirt, but his right leg moved stiffly, dragging ever so slightly with every third step. Jack nodded politely. "Morning." Craig didn't look up, just mumbled something and turned away. Jack filed that away mentally. Later that evening, Marcy, the wine-sipping neighbor from across the street, waved him over. She wore a loose robe and sunglasses even though the sun had set. Her porch smelled like jasmine and cinnamon candles. "You didn't hear this from me," she said, voice low. "But Craig's had that limp since he fell down the clubhouse stairs 2 months ago. Tried to cover it up, but we all saw him." Jack smiled. "Helpful." Marcy leaned closer. "Be careful, hun. They've ruined people before." He nodded. "So I've heard." Back home, Jack began crafting a plan. He wasn't going to wait for them to make the next move. He needed evidence. Real, damning, undeniable proof. And he knew just how to get it. The clubhouse had security cameras. That much he'd already learned. But the server for the system was stored in the maintenance room attached to the back of the building. One of the cameras on Jack's house pointed in that direction, and he had seen Linda Carver and Ray Morris enter that room several times with keycards. If the HOA was laundering puppy sales through that place, or even storing any dogs temporarily, it would be there. Jack didn't want to break in. He wasn't stupid, but he did want to distract them long enough to get someone else inside. Someone they wouldn't suspect. He called up an old friend, Marcus, a former army buddy turned freelance security consultant. They'd served together in Kandahar. Marcus owed him a favor. 2, actually. Jack called it in. By Saturday night, Marcus was parked down the street in a dusty gray sedan, camera in hand, dressed like an HVAC repair guy. Jack had found out that the HOA scheduled maintenance on the clubhouse AC system for Monday morning. All Marcus had to do was get there early, flash a fake work order, and gain access to the maintenance room. He did better than that. Not only did Marcus bluff his way into the room, he also managed to insert a signal sniffer into the HOA network and clone the security drive. Jack met him at the diner off Route 12, where Marcus handed over a flash drive wrapped in foil like it was a spy thriller. "You got something good in there," Marcus grinned. "Whole camera history. 2 weeks worth of footage." Jack bought him a stack of pancakes and a coffee for the road, then headed home and loaded the drive. What he found almost made him sick. The footage showed small crates being wheeled into the clubhouse basement late at night, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always by the same 3 people, Linda, Ray, and Craig. The crates moved. Occasionally, tiny noses poked through the slats. Puppies. No paperwork, no veterinary oversight, no tags, just boxes of breathing product. Once inside, the footage cut out, but on other clips, Jack saw people show up, always men, always carrying envelopes, and leave with those same crates an hour later. It was a damn pet mill. Jack felt his pulse pounding. They were selling animals. Unregistered, likely inbred, no health checks, and using HOA property, funded by dues from every homeowner, to store and move the product. That's why they didn't want emotional support animals around. They couldn't afford any attention to animal welfare. That night, Jack didn't sleep. He copied the footage to 3 separate flash drives. One went in his safe, another in a drop box at the UPS store across town. The third, he mailed to an old contact at a local news station, anonymously. He wasn't done yet, though. The next morning, the HOA held a community meeting at the clubhouse. Jack attended for the first time, quiet and observant. Linda stood at the podium in a red blazer, smiling like she'd just won prom queen. Ray sat beside her, arms crossed, smug. Craig leaned on a cane but said little. "Good morning, neighbors," Linda chirped. "We're here to discuss new updates to our animal policy. As you know, unregistered animals pose risks to our property values, children, and shared spaces. We've decided to increase penalties for unauthorized pets starting next month." Jack raised his hand. Linda blinked. "Yes, Mr. Porter, I just have one question," Jack said calmly. "Do those penalties apply to the animals being stored in the clubhouse basement?" The room went quiet. Ray shifted uncomfortably. Craig paled. "I'm sorry?" Linda said, trying to smile. "You heard me." Jack leaned forward slightly. "Because if we're enforcing animal rules, shouldn't that start with board members keeping unregistered dogs on HOA property and selling them out the back door at 3 a.m.? Gasps echoed through the room. Linda's face lost color. "I think you're mistaken." Jack smiled. "I've got the video. Want to see it?" Someone in the back said, "Wait, what's he talking about?" Jack stepped back. "I'll be filing a report with animal control and the local news tonight. I just figured you all deserve to know where your dues are really going. Enjoy your meeting." And with that, he walked out, Daisy trotting beside him, tail high and proud. Jack didn't look back as he left the HOA meeting. Behind him, chaos erupted. Hushed voices turned into shouts, board members scrambling to explain, and a few concerned neighbors following him out the door. But Jack kept walking. Daisy stayed close to his side, tail swinging like nothing had happened. Back at home, he locked the door, sat at his desk, and opened his laptop. He crafted a concise email to the local animal control office, attached the footage Marcus had retrieved, and wrote a formal complaint. Then he sent another package, this one to code enforcement and the county sheriff's office. He wasn't playing defense anymore. He was going on the offensive. By the next morning, word had spread like wildfire. Someone slipped a note into his mailbox that read, "Thank you for standing up to them. We always knew something shady was going on." Jack didn't know who wrote it, but it confirmed what he'd suspected. Not everyone in the community was on the HOA's side. Most of them just didn't know how deep the rot went. Around 10:30 a.m., two unmarked vans rolled into the neighborhood. Jack stood behind his curtain and watched as animal control officers, along with two uniformed deputies, walked up the steps to the HOA clubhouse. Moments later, a knock echoed on his door. He opened it to find Detective Kelly Ramirez, a no-nonsense woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a badge clipped to her belt. She introduced herself and asked if he was the one who submitted the footage. "I am," Jack said, "and I've got more if you need it." He handed her a second flash drive and told her everything. From the poisoned meat to the night footage, the Craigslist ad, and the drone surveillance. She didn't interrupt once, just nodded slowly, taking notes. When she finished, she said, "You've made a lot of enemies, Mr. Porter." Jack shrugged. "They started it. I'm just finishing it." Ramirez smiled faintly. "We'll be in touch." Over the next few hours, officers came and went from the clubhouse. The maintenance room was emptied. Crates were carried out, not just one or two, but at least 12, each filled with puppies. Some barked, others whimpered. One officer was seen shaking her head, her eyes wet. The story didn't stay local for long. By dinner time, a reporter from Channel 9 News was parked outside Jack's house trying to score an interview. He declined, didn't want the attention, but gave them permission to use his footage. "Just blur my address," he said, "and don't show Daisy." The evening broadcast was brutal. Linda Carver's mugshot flashed on screen, followed by stock footage of the clubhouse. The reporter's voice was grim. What was supposed to be a quiet suburban community turned into the center of a criminal investigation today, as several board members of the Cedar Creek Estates Homeowners Association were arrested in connection with an illegal dog breeding operation run from HOA property. Neighbors gathered in small circles in the street, watching on their phones. People who hadn't said more than 2 words to Jack now looked at him with awe, even admiration. And yet, Jack remained cautious. People like Linda didn't go down easily. She had influence, money, and friends. She might be facing charges now, but Jack knew the legal system moved slowly. There'd be bail, lawyers, courtrooms. That night, he double-checked his cameras, locked his doors, and slept with the lights on. Around 2 a.m., Daisy started growling. Jack sat up, heart pounding. He looked at the screen on his phone. Front porch, motion detected. Someone was standing at the edge of the yard, not moving, just watching. Jack got up, walked to the front window slowly, and peeked through the curtain. It was Ray Morris. He stood just past the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He didn't move, didn't knock, didn't shout, just stared. Jack opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Daisy followed, hackles raised. "You're trespassing," Jack said calmly. Ray didn't respond at first. Then he said, "You think this is over?" Jack crossed his arms. "I think it's just beginning. You better hope those puppies survive, Ray. If even one of them dies, that's felony animal cruelty." Ray sneered. "You don't know who you're messing with." Jack stepped forward. "No, you don't. I buried friends overseas, Ray. I know what real threats look like. You're just a coward in a sweater vest." Ray's face twitched. He turned and walked off, disappearing into the shadows. Jack didn't call the cops. He knew they had bigger fish to fry now, but he saved the footage and emailed it to Ramirez. The next morning, a temporary HOA board was appointed by a court order. The entire neighborhood was put under administrative review. Jack received a formal apology letter from the acting president, who assured him that Daisy was absolutely allowed under the Fair Housing Act and that all future policies would comply with federal law. Daisy got extra treats that day. Over the next week, the mood in the neighborhood shifted. People came out of their homes more. Kids played in the yards again. A few residents put up dog-friendly zone signs in their windows. Jack even got invited to a neighborhood barbecue, which he politely declined but appreciated. Still, there were holdouts, people who glared instead of waving. Jack didn't care. He hadn't done this for popularity. He'd done it for Daisy, for the other dogs, for people too scared to speak. On the 10th day after the arrests, Detective Ramirez called. "They've found more," she said. "A second location tied to Carver's nephew. Dozens more dogs, some of them in bad shape. Your footage helped build the case. The DA's pushing for maximum penalties." Jack exhaled slowly. "Good. One more thing," Ramirez added. "That meat you froze? It tested positive for strychnine. That could have killed your dog, or a child if they touched it." Jack gritted his teeth. "Figures. We're adding attempted animal cruelty to the list. You'll be notified if we need a witness statement." "Anytime," Jack said. "You've got my number." He hung up, leaned down, and hugged Daisy tight. She licked his cheek and wagged her tail like nothing had ever happened. But Jack knew. He knew the scars ran deeper than they looked. He knew trust was hard-won and easily broken. And he knew without a doubt that Cedar Creek would never be the same again. The fallout came faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours of the arrests, the story made the regional news circuit. From there, it hit a national pet advocacy blog, and then things exploded. Pet lovers, animal rights activists, and watchdog HOA reform groups were all over it. Jack's small suburban neighborhood suddenly became the center of a much larger conversation about HOA corruption and animal rights violations. He stayed off social media, didn't give interviews, and refused every podcast request that came his way. He wasn't interested in becoming some kind of poster boy. He just wanted things quiet, stable, safe for Daisy. But peace wasn't in the cards just yet. One evening, while Jack was trimming his hedges, an older man in a crisp navy suit approached his yard. He looked like a lawyer, polished, briefcase in hand, with the kind of teeth that came from money. "Jack Porter?" the man asked, stopping just short of the gate. Jack didn't answer right away. He glanced at Daisy, who was laying nearby with one eye open. "Depends who's asking," Jack said, not putting down his shears. "I'm Michael Levinson. I represent Ms. Linda Carver. I'm here to inform you that a civil suit is being filed against you for defamation, invasion of privacy, and unlawful surveillance." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "You're suing me?" Levinson didn't flinch. "We believe your footage was obtained illegally and that your allegations have caused substantial reputational damage to my client. You will be served within the next 72 hours. Jack looked the man up and down. "Tell Linda she should be more worried about her criminal charges than a civil suit she's going to lose." Levinson straightened his tie. "Consider this your notice." Jack watched him leave, then shook his head and went back to trimming. He wasn't rattled, not really. If anything, it confirmed he'd hit them where it hurt. They were scrambling, throwing threats like knives in the dark. But he'd been through worse, and he had truth and evidence on his side. Still, he decided to call his own attorney. Her name was Riley Grant, and she was sharp, fast-talking, and ruthless in a courtroom. She reviewed the footage, the documentation, and the emails Jack had sent to authorities. "This is a weak case," she said confidently. "They're throwing spaghetti at the wall. Your cameras were on your own property. You didn't hack anything. They're bluffing. Let them." Jack exhaled. "Thanks. But if they go forward," she added, "we countersue. Harassment, emotional distress, retaliation. We'll bury them." Jack liked her already. A few days passed and the official papers arrived. Just like Levinson promised. A formal civil suit, laughable, flimsy, and clearly written in haste. Jack sent them straight to Riley, who promised to file a motion to dismiss before the week was out. Meanwhile, more neighbors began to open up. Mrs. Kalinsky from 2 streets over admitted that she'd reported her missing Shih Tzu to the board last year, and Craig told her the dog probably ran away. Now she wasn't so sure. Another man, Ted, confessed that the HOA had threatened him with fines for feeding stray animals near the trail behind the clubhouse. "Guess I know why now," he muttered bitterly. "Didn't want anything interfering with their inventory." The pieces came together fast. What the HOA board had done wasn't just a random crime. It was systemic exploitation, the misuse of power, the abuse of trust, and the silencing of dissent. Jack wasn't the first person they tried to intimidate. He was just the first one who didn't back down. That fact rattled them more than any police report. Still, the tension remained. A few cars started circling the block slowly at night. Jack couldn't be sure if they were reporters or friends of Linda's, but he began carrying again, legally, discreetly, just in case. One night, a brick was thrown through his front window. Daisy barked and growled until Jack got to the front door, gun drawn, but whoever did it was long gone. The brick had a note attached. "You should have kept your mouth shut." Jack didn't call 911. He called Ramirez directly. The detective arrived in 15 minutes flat. She looked at the glass, took the note, and dusted the brick for prints. "You're getting too close to something big," she said. "Bigger than just the HOA." Jack tilted his head. "How big?" "We traced some of the money from the puppy sales. It leads to offshore accounts, possibly a larger network, illegal breeders, maybe even dog-fighting connections. And Linda Carver's not just some HOA nut. Her brother-in-law is under federal investigation in Nevada. This might go beyond our jurisdiction soon." Jack felt his chest tighten. He'd thought he was just exposing a local scam. But this was bigger. "I'm putting a car on your street," Ramirez said. "Unmarked. Just until we get a better picture." Jack nodded, his jaw tight. "Thanks." That night, he boarded up the window, turned off the lights, and sat by the front door with Daisy at his feet and a bat across his lap. He didn't sleep, but somewhere, deep inside, he smiled. Not because he enjoyed the fight, but because he was finally hitting them in places they never thought someone like him could reach. They thought he was just some dog owner. They didn't know he was a soldier, a strategist, and someone with nothing left to lose. The next morning, Jack woke up to a message on his phone from Detective Ramirez. "Meet me at the sheriff's office, 10 a.m. sharp." He didn't hesitate. Daisy hopped into the car, tail wagging, and Jack drove through the waking neighborhood streets, the morning sun casting long shadows. At the sheriff's office, Ramirez handed him a thick folder filled with documents, photographs, and bank statements. "We've expanded the investigation," she said. "This goes beyond Cedar Creek Estates. The illegal pet ring is part of a multi-state operation." Jack scanned the files. Hidden accounts, shell companies, forged documents, the kind of corporate camouflage criminals use to stay untouchable. Ramirez leaned closer. "We need someone with local knowledge, someone who knows the neighborhood and the people involved. You're the best asset we've got." Jack's jaw tightened. "What exactly do you want me to do?" "Help us identify patterns, connect the dots, find out who else is involved, informants, accomplices, anyone who can testify." Jack nodded. "All right, I'm in." Over the following days, Jack became a ghost in his own community, attending meetings undercover, talking to neighbors who were still afraid, and quietly collecting stories. Some were small, a missing dog here, a suspicious delivery there, but when put together, they formed a web that grew darker and more twisted. One night, Jack got a call from an anonymous number. "I know what you're doing," a voice whispered. "Be careful, they're watching." "Who's watching?" Jack demanded. "You'll see soon enough. Just keep your guard up." The line went dead. Despite the warning, Jack pressed on. He dug through HOA records, cross-checked contractor invoices, and found discrepancies that hinted at money laundering and bribery. A landscaping company hired by the HOA was a front for moving cash. Several board members owned multiple properties used as breeding dens. One afternoon, while reviewing security footage from a neighbor's camera, Jack caught something alarming. A late-night delivery of crates labeled fragile live animals being offloaded at a warehouse just outside town. He forwarded the footage to Ramirez, who immediately coordinated a raid. The warehouse was a nightmare. Dozens of dogs kept in cramped, filthy cages, some sick, some injured. Animal control officers worked tirelessly to rescue and treat them. The raid made headlines. Jack watched from home, Daisy curled beside him as news anchors described the extent of the cruelty. The local community, once divided, now united in outrage and support for the victims. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. One evening, Jack found his mailbox torn open, personal documents scattered across his lawn. Someone had been there, searching for something. He reported it to Ramirez, who increased surveillance and assigned undercover deputies to patrol his street. Despite the threats, Jack's resolve only hardened. He held a community meeting in his garage, inviting residents to speak out and share information. Slowly, people came forward, too afraid before, but now hopeful. The tide was turning. Months passed. Lawsuits piled up against the HOA board. Criminal charges multiplied. Linda Carver's trial became a media spectacle, her fall from grace a cautionary tale. Jack and Daisy became local heroes, symbols of perseverance and justice. But Jack knew the fight wasn't over. The system that allowed this corruption to thrive was bigger than just one neighborhood. As he watched Daisy chase a squirrel across the yard, he made a silent promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, no matter the cost. The trial was the event everyone had been waiting for, a public reckoning that promised justice, or at least accountability. Jack sat in the courtroom every day, Daisy by his side, her calm presence a comfort amid the tension. Linda Carver appeared haughty and unrepentant, her expensive suits and icy glares doing little to hide the cracks beneath her polished facade. Her defense team spun a narrative of conspiracy, claiming Jack was a disgruntled neighbor, jealous and vindictive. But the mountain of evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses testified about the secret breeding dens, the animal neglect, the threats they'd received. Photos of sick puppies and poisoned meat shocked the jury. Even some former HOA members, given immunity, turned on Carver and the others. Jack listened as the prosecutor detailed the elaborate scheme: fake invoices, offshore accounts, the laundering of hundreds of thousands of dollars. It wasn't just about dogs. It was about greed and power. Days stretched into weeks. The courtroom drama dominated local news. Supporters sent Jack letters of encouragement, neighbors came to the trial to show solidarity, and animal advocacy groups rallied outside the courthouse. Late one afternoon, as Jack was preparing to leave, Detective Ramirez approached him quietly. "Good news," she said. "The DA just announced they're seeking maximum penalties. Carver and her co-conspirators are looking at significant jail time." Jack smiled, but it was tempered with exhaustion. "It's not over yet." Ramirez nodded. "No, but it's a start." After the verdict, guilty on multiple counts, the community felt a wave of relief. But Jack knew scars remained. People still feared retaliation. The HOA had tried to silence them for years. To help heal, Jack started a neighborhood coalition focused on transparency, pet rights, and fair governance. They pushed for changes in HOA laws, advocating for residents' rights and stronger animal protection regulations. Daisy became the coalition's mascot, often featured in local papers and events, her gentle face symbolizing hope and resilience. Yet, Jack never forgot the dark side of the story. One evening, while reviewing security footage from his home office, he noticed a shadow moving near the back fence. The figure paused, then vanished. He tightened his security system and doubled down on vigilance. The fight against corruption was ongoing. He was ready. Because in Cedar Creek Estates and everywhere else, justice had to be fought for, doggedly and without surrender. Months passed, and Cedar Creek Estates slowly began to heal. The HOA board was completely replaced, with new members elected by the residents, people who cared about the neighborhood and its values. Transparency became the new rule, and the shadow of fear lifted little by little. Jack found himself unexpectedly in the spotlight, invited to speak at community forums and even at a national HOA reform conference. He spoke about courage, about the power of a single voice standing up against corruption, and about the bond between humans and their pets. But he always brought Daisy along, the real hero who had been his silent partner through it all. Life wasn't perfect. The memories of threats, broken windows, and dark nights stayed with him. Sometimes, when the wind rustled through the trees or a car slowed suspiciously by his house, a cold shiver ran down his spine. But the fear no longer ruled him. One spring afternoon, Jack sat on his porch with Daisy resting at his feet, a warm breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. A little girl from down the street approached, holding a small box wrapped in paper. "Mr. Porter, this is for Daisy," she said shyly. Inside was a handmade collar, embroidered with bright flowers and tiny paw prints. Jack smiled, his eyes misting. "Thank you. She'll love it." The neighborhood was changing because one man refused to stay silent, because he chose to fight, because love for a dog can be stronger than fear. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the street, Jack knew the battle was over, but the journey wasn't. There would always be challenges, always be those who abused power. But with courage, truth, and a loyal dog by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. Daisy looked up, her eyes bright and trusting. Jack reached down, scratching behind her ears. "Ready for the next adventure, girl?" She wagged her tail. And together, they faced the future, unbroken, unbowed, and unstoppable.